Welcome everyone to another episode of the Full Potential Live Show. I am your host, Nick Wagner Sr., and I hope you're doing well on this Sunday evening. This last Sunday, I think, of officially spring, and then what we're going to be in summer next Sunday, which is exciting. I'm thrilled to be joined today with Matt Laufer, and we're going to get into his career story and everything that has brought him to the point of being an artist today. So Matt, first I want to say welcome to the show. I appreciate you making time.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
So every Sunday night, Matt, and I know we talked about this, I interview someone on my live show, and we stream it live on both LinkedIn and YouTube. And so people can watch us have this conversation live. And then what I also do is then we'll share the recording through social media, my social media, and also your social media tomorrow on Monday. And then later in the week, I'll take the audio of this and I'll turn it into the Full Potential podcast. And we release this conversation on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Anchor, etc. So we'll make sure that everyone who wants to see this will have a chance to see it. And I was mentioning to Matt before the show, so Matt has his own website. It's called A Work of Heart by Matt Laufer, and that is his website where he actually sells his artwork. We will make sure to link to that in the show description on YouTube and the show description on the podcast as well, Matt. So if anyone wants to get in
Thank
touch with
you.
you to check out your artwork, they'll be able to do that. So Matt, again, welcome to the show. I've never had an artist on the Full Potential Live Show before, so you're my first artist. So that's a milestone there. So why don't we just start with? I always want to kind of kick off the conversation with my guests. If you meet someone, whether it be in a social setting or in a more professional setting, and someone asks you, what do you do, right? So what do you do for work? How do you answer that question, Matt?
Well, I'm an artist who paints and writes poetry. I paint with my mouth, and I sell my paintings online.
And I think for you mentioned online, so you have a website where you sell the paintings, and you're also on social media, which is pretty cool because you share a lot of your artwork on social media.
I do.
But I really want to, this the hope of these conversations I have with people, Matt, is everyone's career journey is so unique. So no one's taken the career journey that you've taken in your life to get to where you are. My career journey is unique, and by meeting inspirational guests like yourself every week, I hope to inspire other people that are thinking about what they want to do with their careers. So what I'd love to kind of go through is how you ended up here as an artist, right? So how did you end up sitting here
Great.
with me tonight as an artist? So I kind of want to go back to when you were a little Matt, way back when you were a kid. Was being an artist something that you had dreamt of doing, and something that you always wanted to do, or when you grew up, was there something else that you wanted to do as a kid?
When I was a child, I dreamed of being an archaeologist. I wanted to travel the world and dig up dinosaur bones for the longest time. It wasn't until I was a teenager that I began writing, and I was inspired to become a poet.
So it's interesting because when I think of and you'll have to educate me on this. When I think of an artist, I think of your paintings and the work you do with the canvas. I actually don't. I never thought that writing poetry was a form of art, but now that you mention it, it is. So
Yeah,
so so you've been doing poetry since you were in high school.
yes.
And how did you get into poetry? Like, what was the was there a was there? I always find that there's either like a moment or an event or a person that helps someone maybe get into something like that. So what drew you to poetry?
I was a voracious reader when I was young, and I'd read everything under the sun. And I just happened to probably stumble upon a book of poetry, and I think that's how I started.
Yeah, and so you wanted to be an archaeologist when you were really little, which doesn't surprise me because I think a lot of little kids want to be archaeologists.
Yeah.
What So obviously you weren't going to be an archaeologist in high school. So what was your first paying job in high school that you actually when you were working as a kid? What was your first paying job?
Actually, my first paying job goes back to when I was about 8 to 10 years old.
Okay.
I worked at my father's liquor store, and I helped him clean up. I helped him stock bottles, things of
I,
that
I
sort.
guess since it's a family business, you're allowed to do that because that seems
Yes,
young. But since it was your father, that's why you could do it. So that
yes.
so so what because I think a lot of people learn a lot from that first working experience. What did you take away from that experience working at such a young age with your father in his store?
Well, I saw how hard my father worked, and admired my father and wanted to be like him. So I set him as my role model. I'd watch him work, and I would do the same thing.
Yeah, no, no, I totally get that. And you mentioned it was his liquor store, so he was an entrepreneur as well, kind of like you are today as an artist, which is pretty cool. So you might not have owned a liquor store, but you're following in his footsteps, being an entrepreneur. When you were in high school, and you were doing poetry, obviously you'd been working since a young age. Was was the plan to go into the family business? Was the plan to go to college? Like what was expected of you as a high school graduate to do next as the next step of your life? How did that conversation go with your parents?
Well, actually, in high school, my story begins to take a unique turn. Before I was 17 years old, my parents told me, whatever you can put your mind to, you can achieve. Um, I did well in high school. At 17 years old, my mother passed away unexpectedly from an asthma attack. I was a senior in high school, and that really shook my world. I I dropped out of high school and wasn't looking at college. Was just, I didn't know how to deal with that pain.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't realize that. Um, and I'm sorry for your loss. When you dropped out of high school, obviously you were pretty upset about your mom. What was your plan? Did you go get a job? Like what was your plan at that point from an employment perspective or a career perspective?
At that point, I had money saved up. I moved in with a bunch of guys. I just lived off whatever my savings were. And it wasn't until my savings ran out that I got like a deli job or a landscaping job,
Right.
just anything to get by.
Yeah. And what was and obviously this must have been hard for your father too. Did your father still own the liquor store at that point?
He did.
Did you ever go and work with him with the family business, or was that not something you decided to do?
Well, at after my mom died, I started to get into using drugs. So my father and I weren't speaking. Um, they were doing the right thing by letting me kind of fall on my face until I got help.
Yeah, and I know we talked about a little bit about that before the show. What obviously that's a really difficult thing for any family to go through, and you obviously were still hurting from the loss of your mother. What was that turning point that enabled you to get help? And was it your family? Was it friends? Like what was it that kind of took you on that path to get help and change your life?
Well, I completely burned all of my bridges, and I actually attempted suicide. I woke up in the hospital, surrounded by my family, and that was the moment I decided I needed help.
How old are you at that point, Matt?
Oh, I was about 20,
20.
maybe 19,
Yeah.
20.
So at that point, so you wake up, you're with your family. What was so? You had like an epiphany yourself that you needed help, and this was like a sign to maybe think about yourself and get yourself the help you needed, or how did that happen, or did your family convince you?
My family convinced me. I was still, um, I was still in that same negative mindset.
Yeah,
So I went to a couple rehabs, and eventually one worked. It just clicked.
that's great.
So that was about, I was 21 years old when I got, you know, free of drugs and alcohol.
It's sad to hear that's the path you went down because it sounded like before your mother passed away, you were actually in a pretty good place.
Yeah, I was. I was very happy.
Did did you turn back to poetry and art during the time in rehab? Was that something that helped get you through everything?
I did. I started drawing again. I started writing. It was very cathartic.
I can imagine. I think that's that's one of those hobbies that it lets you it channels your creativity and lets you kind of let your mind get distracted from other things. So
Exactly.
so you're 21 at this point. You're drug free. You're sounds like you're on a better path in life. What did you end up doing from a career perspective at this point once you were healthy and after you took care of yourself?
From a career perspective, I started working with my dad again as a job. I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Um, I went back to community college, but I just couldn't seem to stay motivated.
And and so with the family business, but with the liquor store, so you were helping him run. So you got yourself help. You were healthy. He was happy. You guys were working together. When you went back to community college, so obviously you finished high school. You got your GED. You went to community college. What major did you pick at community college? Like what was your original plan?
My original plan was just to graduate, and I had no idea what I wanted to do as a job.
Yeah.
My major was liberal arts.
Okay. And did you end up finishing community college or what was the path you took there?
No, I didn't end up finishing.
And what you mentioned you were having a hard time staying motivated. Was it? Look, I think this is something we've talked about on the show before. College is not for everyone, and I think that historically, for a very long time, many guidance counselors in a lot of high schools across the United States told kids got to go to college. That's the only way you're going to have a career. Which I think more and more students today are realizing that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of
Yeah.
options besides going to a 4 year or your college or university. So community college didn't work out. What was your thought at that point when you didn't finish college?
At that point, I thought I was just going to keep working at the liquor store. I was having the time of my life, snowboarding, doing everything a 22-year-old would do.
Right.
So I really had no plan or no direction.
And I think I think the story that you're telling is one that a lot of kids go through, right? Because I think a lot of kids, even kids that go to college, they pick a major and they don't even know if that's what they want to do. So, I actually think what you're saying probably resonates with a lot of people because they simply don't know what they want to do. And I think you were on that same path, and you were of the mindset, well, at least you're healthy, you're having fun, you're working with your father, so you're making money, you're working with the family business, and it seemed like things were going pretty well.
Right. Things were going well. At the age of 23, I was involved in a motor vehicle accident that left me a quadriplegic, which means I can't move from my chest down.
And so, I think for those watching on the live stream, you might notice that Matt's in a wheelchair, um, and you maybe you can't tell from the video, but is so that event, Matt, obviously completely changed your life for forever. How long ago did that happen at this point?
17 years ago.
17 years ago, and so you were. I mean, the sad thing about it this is you would really like turn your life around.
Right.
You got out of rehab. You were doing well. I mean, do you want to share what a little bit about what that journey was like after the accident, and you're doing very well. I mean, you're an accomplished artist. You have a house, like things are going well, but 17 years ago after this accident, what was your state of mind? Like, how hard was it to come back?
It
And
was
I'm sure
very,
you and I'm sure you weren't even thinking about a career at that point. But what can you maybe you can share with our audience a little bit about what that journey was like?
well, I remember being, after the accident, being in the hospital bed, intubated, and I remember wanting to die. I wish they didn't save my life. I was in so much pain. I, I just wanted to die. And I couldn't move. I knew what my life was going to be like, or I thought I knew what my
Hmm.
life was going to be like. Um, there were dark times. I wanted to die. After the hospital, when I lived at home, um, I suffer from depression and anxiety, and that was only intensified by this accident.
How important was your family to help you get through this, Matt?
My family was huge. My family is everything. My I hate to use this term, but my stepmom, Jane, I call her Reds, actually quit working and stayed home to take care of me.
That's that's a pretty big deal for someone to do that, and
Yeah,
obviously you needed it at that point. So this was 17 years ago, and
yeah,
you were back, and you obviously now you were physically hurting, you were mentally hurting because of the trauma and how this has changed your life. I'm sure you weren't even thinking about work at that point.
no, I thought there was no job I could do because I couldn't move. What role in society could I fill as a quadriplegic? That's what I asked myself.
So so I guess my question for you is how did you overcome this really dark period of your life right after the accident where you started getting some hope? I mean, was there were there people that like were there doctors or other quadriplegics that you talked to about how to live as a quadriplegic, or what did you do to educate yourself on what your life was going to be like?
Well, after I lived at home, I went to a place called New Horizons, which is an independent living facility. There were quadriplegics there, people with MS, various disabilities. And it's there I learned to live as a quadriplegic.
So that's a community designed to help people with with the needs that you might have, right? Like the need for a wheelchair, the need to how you're going to get around, how you're going to eat, all those different things. It's designed to help people basically, to your point, learn how to live, which I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, that's exactly what it does.
And and I want to ask this question because I mean, you mentioned it earlier, right? Your thought was, what on earth am I ever going to do from a career perspective to contribute to society as a quadriplegic? So when you met other quadriplegics, were they working? Like, what were they doing that inspired you?
Actually, I not trying to sound negative, but a lot of them weren't working. Um, but they showed me that I could live.
Yeah,
There was a community that they went out on their own, got their haircuts, went grocery shopping, did all the normal things I'm a normal person that someone would do.
right.
So that really gave me the confidence to try to go out there and make something of myself.
So at what point is you have been doing poetry since you were in high school? You've been doing, after your run in with drugs and rehab, you said you were doing artwork. At what point, after the accident, did you realize that you wanted to do poetry and you wanted to do artwork again and you wanted to start painting? Like how long after the accident did you realize that?
Um, 14 years.
Wow. So
Yeah,
six no. So how many years ago from today?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Okay.
Th-
And oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, 3 years ago, I got very sick. I went into the hospital and I met a therapist who I clicked with, and that got me started on the path I'm on today.
And it was your therapist, was this someone that specifically was there to help you from a physical perspective or a mental perspective or both?
A mental
A
perspective.
mental perspective. Okay. And what was it that this therapist shared with you or explained to you that made you realize that you could be an artist even as a quadriplegic?
She made me believe in myself. I got rid of the negative self talk, or I'm getting rid of the
Right.
negative self talk. Positive mental attitude is what we work on.
And I mean, I think it's amazing, right? Because, I mean, Matt, you've been through so much in your life, so much trauma, and that this one person had this much of an impact on you. It always fascinates me how what the human connection can do at times to lift up someone's spirits and really change someone's life in a positive direction. So you went 14 years without doing your
And
poetry and without doing anything from an artwork perspective. And back to what you said earlier, you were not working at this point.
no,
So so 3 years ago you meet this therapist, you change your perspective, and the two of you talk, and did you tell her that you wanted to start painting and you wanted to start writing again? Or how did that come up?
no, I started doing that slowly on my own again as I started to feel better about myself.
So, I think for people that are watching or listening, as a quadriplegic, I'm sure writing is probably very challenging. So, do you do voice to text?
I do.
You do. Okay. So that I can understand. Okay, so you use voice to text. We all have that on our phones, and you can do your poetry. But how on earth does a quadriplegic paint the amazing artwork that you paint?
I paint with my mouth.
All right, so I want to ask this question. How did you figure out that you could paint with your mouth? And that seems very difficult to me. I can't even paint with my hands. How are you painting these things with your mouth?
When I was in rehab, when I first got hurt, I saw a video or I saw someone in the art room who was painting with their mouth. I remember that and I decided hey, let me give this a try.
And do you remember the first painting that you painted?
Yeah, I still have it.
You still have it?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've gotten substantially better since you started, right? Because I'm sure that it can't be easy to paint with your mouth. So I'm sure you figured out ways to do different things with the brush, ways to maybe make the artwork more the way that you wanted it. How much have you improved over these years with, painting to painting to painting?
I'd like to think I've improved greatly. Um, every painting is different, but I think my technique is getting better and better.
So, and I have so many questions for you because I am not an
Uh-huh.
artist by any means. So, and I've never claimed to be, but is so first question, where when you set out to do this, where do you get the inspiration to do each painting? Right? Is it something you've seen in the past that you want to recreate? Is it just something that you've come up with in your mind? Like, how are you inspired to do all this artwork?
I know. I pump out a lot of artwork, and the inspiration comes from a lot of it comes from the joy I found in living again. A lot of it comes from my mind, which is, um, it's unique to me. It's my own,
Yeah, I mean, I feel
and
I've
it
seen
comes.
it. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
And it comes from my experiences. I try to put those experiences on canvas.
So for those that are listening and watching, and again, we'll link to Matt's site. It's a work of heart by Matt Laufer, and that's actually where Matt posts paintings that he actually sells, and you can buy Matt's artwork and put it up in your home if you're into Matt's style. So Matt, there's different styles of painters. What style painting do you do? Is one question I have, and
Okay.
what. So I don't know if you have if there's a specific style that you would call it, and is it. I know it's paint, but is there a certain type of paint? Like how big are the canvases? I'm curious on some of the logistics that you do from a painting perspective.
Well, the canvas size is an issue because my easel is only so big. I could only fit the biggest canvas I've used is 20 by 24.
Okay.
Um, what
What's
I'm
what's yeah? What's the style of painting? Like
uh,
what would you classify the style as?
well, I like to do a little bit of everything, but my favorite are abstract paintings.
Okay. And is this all watercolors? Is it oil based? What kind of paint do you use?
I use oil and acrylic.
Oh, you do. Oh, interesting. Okay. It just I find this interesting because you didn't paint as in high school. You did the poetry.
No.
Do you think that you've come to love this because it's a way for you to express yourself without talking?
Hmm. It is because when I write poetry, I write it in such a way that I want it to be very open to interpretation. Same with my paintings.
Same with your paintings. So this is you mentioned earlier that you asked yourself at one point what could a quadriplegic do from a career perspective, and how could you work. You are now working. You are an entrepreneur as a self-employed artist. You have a website where people can buy artwork. You're on LinkedIn, you're on Instagram, you're on social media sharing all your artwork. Did If you go back to when you had the accident at 23, did you ever think 17 years later you'd be sitting here surrounded by artwork behind you and calling yourself an artist.
I never could have never dreamed it.
It's it seems like it brings you to life though. Just talking about it, I can sense the excitement that you have and the passion that you have for it.
I do. It's really made an impact on my life. Um, and I just live day by day, and I paint almost every day.
I was going to ask you, you paint almost every day, which is fantastic. How often are you also doing poetry? Because I feel like the poetry is probably a little bit easier for you, just because with the voice to text, it's probably not as hard of work as the actual painting. But how often do you do the poetry?
Um, I try to write a couple times a week. I'd say that's my average.
Yeah, you're obviously a very creative person, because both of these things that you're doing, I think for a lot of people, especially like myself, would be very difficult to do. So you have the website where you're selling your artwork, and I know you had a showing at a gallery. Was it in 2019? Correct.
That's correct at the Discovery Museum in Bridgeport.
So how tell us how that happened? How did you end up with your own gallery show? As at that point, you'd only been doing it for a couple of years.
Well, somebody saw a video of me painting and passed it along to someone at the Discovery Museum, and they contacted me, and we set up a show.
That's so cool. How was what was what did people think of your artwork, and how was the turnout at the gallery?
It was the biggest turnout they ever had.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
yeah, and I think people really liked my artwork.
No, that's awesome. So, is there someone that you use as a mentor that is also an artist that you've connected with that has helped you or guided you with how to paint and tips and on how to do this, or is this really all self taught?
It's really all self-taught.
That's
Um,
unbelievable.
yeah, I don't watch YouTube videos on how to paint. I just I'll try to recreate sometimes a painting, but they're all original. They all come from my mind.
I mean, it's just like it's to be self taught like that. I think is really interesting because I think a lot of people, if you go through a lot of artists, I think a lot of artists have other people that have kind of helped them along the way, but you've done this all on your own. How much experimentation do you get to do on a daily basis? So what I mean by that is art is one of those things that I might like it, you might hate it, someone else might love it. Everyone has a different opinion, right? You work so hard to make these works of art. Do you sometimes just get through one and you're like, I don't even like this, and just get rid of it?
Oh, I'm the worst.
Are
I
you?
do that all the time.
I couldn't even imagine that putting all that hard work into it and then just getting rid of it.
One time, I actually had one of my caretakers put a piece of canvas that I just painted on the ground so I could run it over with my wheelchair.
Oh, that's amusing. I mean, at least they were helpful and were able to put it down for you so you could run it over.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to what I said earlier about
Oh,
how
right.
I think my goal with all of these career journeys is to inspire people. And clearly, you are an inspirational person. You've been through a lot in your life, and I think you've proven to not only yourself but your family and your friends and everyone else that it doesn't really matter what life throws at you. You've overcome it, and you, after not working for many years, created your own business, became an entrepreneur, are now self-employed as an artist. And I think what I love about your story is my hope is other people will watch this and be like, if Matt can do that, why can't I do something in my career and make a pivot? Because you went from never thinking you were going to work again to having a conversation with the right therapist at the right time and now you're loving life, and you're artist, and you're happy, and your work is making other people happy. So that's why, I wanted to have you on the show, because I thought you had such a powerful story, because I really truly think you're an inspirational human.
I appreciate that.
Well, I think I think to have a piece of artwork by you in someone's home, I think people can look at that and say, "Wow, like this was painted with someone's mouth, no hands." I couldn't even do the artwork. I couldn't even paint as well as you do with my hands, and you're doing it with your mouth. So it just to put that in perspective, I think you really probably inspire people with everything you do. And I'm hoping that people really can get a chance to look at your artwork on your website and see the amazing work that you're doing.
Yes, I
So
hope so too.
what is next, Matt? So you launched your website recently where people can buy your artwork. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Like what's your goal now that you have this business and you're self-employed? What's your goal and where you want to get to?
Well, I actually recently just applied to the Mouth and Foot Painters Association. I entered 6 pieces of artwork, and they're going to review it and see if they'll review it and see if I get accepted. Um, from there, I'll get technical training in painting, and the hopes is to become a professional artist.
So I didn't even know that association existed. So that seems pretty cool. And I mean I think just to go out there, I would say you already are a professional artist. But I think obviously you seem to be a lifelong learner. So it sounds like you're going to be able to get even some more tips on how to be even better through this group, which sounds great.
Yeah, that's my hope.
That's
And
fantastic.
I would love to do galleries and showings, build my business, sell T-shirts.
Oh, you actually want to sell T-shirts with the artwork on them?
Yes.
Oh, very cool. Okay. Well, I think that sounds awesome. When will you know if you get into that association?
Due to the COVID outbreak, things are delayed a little bit, so I'm not sure.
Okay. So I want to ask you a few more questions that I always close with my same question for every guest. But I want to ask you, who has been the biggest inspiration in your life throughout all of these difficult times that you've had?
My biggest supporter, my biggest fan, somebody who's always been in my corner, my biggest advocate is Jane Laufer, my stepmom.
That's so powerful that you're not even you're not even her biological son, and she's done that much for you.
Yeah, she loves me just like I was her own child.
Well, that's fantastic, and so shout out to Jane. So I always close with the same question, Matt. I want to know what has helped you reach your full potential. So what has helped you get to where you are today, where you have defied all the odds, you know, done things you never thought you'd do before. You're now a successful artist as a quadriplegic. What is the advice that you would give my audience on what has helped you get to this point and reach your full potential? What would you share with people?
Well, I'd like to share that what's what's helped me the most was to have a positive mental attitude. Happiness is a choice, um, and you can truly, whatever you put your mind to, you can accomplish. You can fall on your face and get right back up again and keep doing it.
I think your words will resonate with many people right now. That happiness is a choice. With everything going on right now in the world, I think having that positive mindset is definitely a good idea, especially because to your point, it's really what is that mindset that you choose, and it sounds like you made a conscious decision to choose happiness, and has now gotten to where you are today.
Correct. Every day I wake up, I'm in pain. I wake up, I can't move. You know, I don't want to, I have to go through a whole routine to get ready. Some days I don't want to do it, but I make the choice every day to put
Well,
myself out there.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much for making time and joining us on the show. Your story is truly remarkable. And again, I think you're a true inspiration, Matt. So, again, for anyone who's watching or listening, Matt's website is A Work of Heart by Matt Laufer. We'll link to it in the show description so everyone can go check it out. You can also follow Matt on Instagram. You can also connect with Matt on LinkedIn. So be sure to do that. He's an inspirational painter and an inspirational human. And Matt, I really appreciate you joining the show tonight.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
Thank you, Matt. Be well.
I will.